Thanks for coming back and watching us. I got Josh Arnold here. Josh Arnold, one of the principals of the legendary Bob and Tom show. Happy you're here, buddy. How you doing?
Oh my gosh, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and yeah, I appreciate you having me on. And look at it. Look, I'm even the 50 toasts, right?
Oh, look at you drinking a beer. Don't let Tom Griswold know you're having beer at 9-something p.m.
No, no.
On a school night. That's completely unacceptable behavior.
It sure is. Yeah, he's convinced I will be useless tomorrow morning because I'm going to be staying up late.
He's so funny that way. It was hilarious that he called you out. By the way, you should know, I covered this on the Christy Lee episode, but just so you know, I didn't want to get into any trouble by doing this badly. So I texted the four of you principals at the same time. Because I knew that immediately it was going to be, oh, he asked you and not me. I didn't want to have any of that shit. And you know what I thought would happen? Here's what I thought would happen. I thought you would respond immediately because we're comics and we've known each other prior, and there's a little bit of a sort of brethren thing in this weird club that we're in.
Yes.
I figured Christy Lee would say yes soonish. I figured Chick would wait and say yes eventually, and I'd never hear back from Tom. That was my guess.
Right.
So I got Christy Lee like in the first minute was like, yeah, let's do it. I'm in. I didn't hear from you for like a week. I still haven't heard from Chick. And Tom said, let's do it, but in the afternoon. And so we're going to sort it out, I think.
Okay, cool. Yeah. The reason you didn't hear from me right away is I was in the mountains.
I know this now. That's right.
Yes, yeah, and finally, when I got back, I was able to respond.
I just wanted you to know that you weren't invited like third or whatever. I didn't know. So that's a good segue because that was one of my first questions. Tell me about the mountains because as comics, we know that civilians will go, wait, you go to dinner by yourself? You go to a movie by yourself? Is that weird? And we think, no, that's not weird. That's great. You took it to a whole new layer and went on a vacation by yourself.
Yes, yeah. Went on a vacation to Franklin, North Carolina, and I was at 4,000 feet in the Smoky Mountains.
Franklin.
Yeah,
I know Franklin.
You do?
I believe it or not, my first girlfriend's family was from Franklin, so I've been there for a Thanksgiving or something in high school, like a million years ago. I know Franklin
nice.
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
There wasn't too much to know. It's kind of a small town. And I loved it. It was, but I got there. It was this very rustic, out of the way cabin up in a mountain, and it was a bit out of my comfort zone. And I love being alone. This was alone.
Right.
And I mean, it was one of those things where I'd be sitting on the balcony of the place reading, and I would hear a fly, and I'd look up. And the fly was a good 30 yards away. I was like, I shouldn't be able to hear that. And I mean, it was isolated. And I spent 5 days there, which was maybe too many.
Right.
But I was actually kind of surprised at how ready I was to get back to, society.
Right.
I loved it. I will do it again, but I was certainly, it certainly was a little more of a shock than I thought it would be.
Now, when you do something like that, do you have sort of like ground rules, or you're like, I'm not going to be in my phone for this amount of time, I'm not going to do any of the regular things? Are you trying to have a gigantic break from your normal life? That's the goal, right?
Yes, and the only two rules I kind of set for myself were no social media and no news. Those were kind of, the two things that I just kind of wanted to step away from for a second.
Good for you.
And for the most part, I was able to do it. I stayed away from social media, but it's easy for me to put my phone down. I'm not married and I don't have kids, so I can kind of get away with putting my phone down for a while.
Right.
So I tend to do that on my own anyway. But
braggart.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not bad.
Nice.
But The news thing, I turned on the TV a couple times while I was like cooking in the cabin just to have some sort of noise in the background because it would get eerily quiet and I was uncomfortable using strange appliances and dishes and stuff. And so I just wanted some, so I would have Law and Order on, but occasionally I would flip through and catch a quick glimpse of news and go, oh, I'm not supposed to do that, and then move on. So
I like that. Good for you, man. That's great. All right, I didn't plan to front load all of your vacation questions, but I'm curious about your brother's trip as well. I had very briefly in my life it wasn't briefly actually, it was a nice long run, maybe a decade plus, where we did a boys trip every year, kind of around the same time of year. And you kind of had it in the calendar and you kind of knew it was coming, and we would talk about it 6 months out and debate the city. And it was a thing that was nice to have. And when you said that you had your annual fishing trip with your brothers, I was immediately envious. I love that construct. How long have you guys been doing that?
Boy, I would say over 10 years. But even as kids, that's where our family, I grew up in St. Louis, and the Ozarks was 2.5, 3 hours away. Lake of the Ozarks is where we go every year.
Right.
And, we didn't have, it was sort of the stereotypical comedian's life. We were poor, and so that was like our big family vacation, was to get in the car for a couple hours and go camp at the Lake of the Ozarks.
Right.
And yeah, and we all just sort of fell in love with it. And now my brother owns. We would typically go and just rent a place, a little house or a little cabin, and fish for a few days. My brother now he owns a house there on the lake, and so.
Oh, wow.
Now we just get to, I mean, it's way more comfortable and we can be a little rowdier if the sisters-in-law and nieces and nephews aren't there. But
gotcha.
Not that we don't get out of control, but it certainly gets loud, I would say.
Yeah, that's awesome. My mom has a lake house, and my brother has like an annual thing that he does with his buddies there. They play cards and they go out on the boat and they drink 100 beers, and
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's great. I love that.
It's a lot of fun.
Super cool. All right, so let's get to this more meaty subject for me. Yeah, I I have a friend that we met in about 1994, and we sometimes refer to him as our new friend. Right, because there's some of my buddies we've known each other forever.
Right.
And you must feel like the new friend at Bob and Tom, right? You've been there a long time, but you're the new guy by a lot, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's been 4 years, and I'm still certainly the new guy. With the addition of Willie Griswold, I'm less the new guy than I was.
Right.
But I certainly am. And I still, there's still days where I totally feel like an imposter and I have no business being it.
Right.
But I think that's good. I think it's good to sort of stay humble and realize, hey, yeah, you're still learning I learn something new every day by either doing something right or most often doing something wrong and then knowing, okay, I can't do that next time. Or
All right, give us an example. Come on, give me.
One of the more interesting things that Christy Lee said one morning, and she wasn't addressing me. Her and Chick were actually talking, and I just, my ears opened up, because if I can hear any of the veterans talk about radio, I just love listening to it, because this has been not just their career, but like their lives for 30 plus years.
Right.
So Christy and Chick were talking, and Christy at one time said, it's not always about what you say. It's most of the time, it's what's more important is what you don't say. And that really struck me as being so wise and and that's something that I really think about now is, do I have to say this? In my head, do I have to, even if I have what I think is a decent joke, is it going to change the course of the conversation? Is it going to interrupt, a good flow? Is it going to potentially derail everything?
Right.
Whether it's too edgy or too irreverent or whatever. And is it going to reveal something about me that at this time shouldn't be revealed. So in other words, you can actually sound a lot smarter than you are by just not talking. So if they're having a conversation about something I know nothing about,
right.
if I don't say anything, the listener assumes I know exactly what they're talking about. But as soon as I say something that's either incorrect or I question, hey, what? Then it's oh man, he didn't know. And I do that a lot with
That's
I'll
funny.
do that. In all honesty, I'll do it during sports because I don't follow football as much as Chick or you or stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
I follow it sort of tangentially, and so they if he and Tom get into some discussion about 1970s, the Browns in the 1970s or whatever, so long as I'm quiet, people kind of think I'm in the know.
It's genius. I had a buddy at college, and the girls were like, "He's so mysterious." We were like, "No, he's got nothing to say." That's
right. He's a dumbass.
All right. Wow, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah. But okay. So legend has it, you can correct the around the edges on this, but essentially you grew up listening to the Bob and Tom show and then eventually became a part of it. Now, obviously you weren't a child, but at what point did you first connect to Bob and Tom?
High school. I was 16 or 17.
Okay.
And I was working at a movie theater, and one of the managers of the movie theater, and I became very good friends. And he had the CD Factory Air from Bob and Tom, and he's like, "You have to listen to this." And I was like, "Are those the guys who were on K-Sheet?" Because they were syndicated in St. Louis at the time.
Oh, I remember K-Sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I would just never listen. I never listened to the radio in the morning. I would wake up and groggily just go to school, and I was usually on the bus, so I never heard morning radio really. And so he played some for me, and I was immediately hooked and called at the number at the time. The phone number was 1-800-BUY THIS, because the internet was pre-internet essentially.
Sure. Yeah.
So you had to call and order and then wait 6 to 8 weeks. And I ordered whatever CDs they had, and they came in, and then I started making a point of listening while I was getting ready for school, and and then I just listened, all the time.
That's so great that you grew up to be a principal member of the thing that you fell in love with as a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah, and in many ways, it's a literal dream come true, because my goal at the time, I always kind of had shifting career goals, but in high school, I wanted to be on radio. And so I discovered my desire to be on radio essentially the same time I discovered Bob and Tom, or that it was, presented to me. And eventually in college, I decided I wanted to get into filmmaking, and then just writing. And then, I started doing improv and all these things. And then I got back. I had done stand-up in like grade school at the variety shows and stuff. And I always wanted to be a stand-up until kind of later. And then eventually in my early 20s, I decided, no, I want to do stand-up. And it was the Bob and Tom show was sort of my Tonight Show. It was, I want to get on there and I want to make them laugh.
Right.
That's my main goal. And so I kind of built my stand-up trajectory. I wanted the trajectory to be get good enough to get on Bob and Tom.
Right. That's great. Yeah. And so then the first time you did it, was it just like the most terrifying thing in the world?
Yeah. I mean, it's so nervous. And I felt ready and I was excited, but crazy nervous, of course, barely slept the night before. One saving grace was that I was going to be going in with Tommy Johnigan, who's a good friend of mine. We both were doing stand-up in St. Louis at the time. And he was almost he had been on plenty of times.
Right.
And so I knew I was going to be in there with somebody familiar.
Yeah, that's nice.
But I got bumped. I ended up...
oh, really?
Yeah, they had Tommy come in first. Like, I think I was scheduled to go in, 9:20. So it was going to be the last part, which is standard for a newer guest.
Yeah.
I was at the time. And so they were having so much fun with Tommy, they just never brought me in. and the show ended.
Thanks a lot, friend.
Yeah, and Tom, I remember Tom was so apologetic and so kind about it. And in a way, it may have kind of done me a little bit of a favor because they remembered the next time it came through, hey, we bumped that dude. Let's try to get him in here.
Right.
So the next time I came in, I was even a little bit more ready, maybe, because I had more, 6 or 8 months. You know what I mean? Like, you get better.
That's something, again, it's hard to explain that to a non-comic, but that's, you get all revved up for a thing that doesn't happen and you feel empty inside. And then, the process does help you get better at the process, right?
Yeah, exactly. In a sense, it was sort of like, okay, I got the logistics out of the way. I got up, I got booked, I got up, I showed up at the studio, I found where it was, that kind of thing. I mean, even though I was with Tommy, who'd been there before, but yeah.
That's your little list of 3 things for Tom to ask you. Right.
Yeah, I had a list of 5 things that he was going to ask me, and 3 of which I was like, I kind of hope he doesn't ask me. Yeah, and so the second time I got in there, and Greg Warren was in there, who's another one of my best friends, and so we.
They're all your boys.
And yeah, so he was. So I was comfortable, and I felt pretty ready. And the first joke, Tom, I had was, I guess this was like 10, 12 years ago, somewhere around there. So the joke was maybe, I don't know if this joke would fly anymore. I honestly don't. But it was, hey, did you guys know that in October they have National Coming Out Day? I was like, I didn't know that existed until that morning. I got a phone call from my dad going, well. And it's a decent joke or whatever.
That's a great joke.
So Tom said something about I forget how he led me into it. And so I go, hey, yeah, National Coming Out Day was this. I didn't know that existed until I got a phone call from my dad going, and Bob goes, well. He totally beat me to the punchline.
Oh my goodness.
So in my head, I was like, and it got a big laugh. And because I said it kind of at the same time, and we laughed, and it got a laugh. But in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, is that such an obvious joke that, and then I went, well, no, Bob is so good.
Yeah.
That, I mean, look, it's not the least obvious joke, but
I actually went a different way. It surprised me anyway. Whatever.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, each person's going to have a different, like, what did their dad say to them?
Right. I thought your dad was gay when this joke started.
Oh, he was very gay, but we don't get into that. So I can't believe I'm here. But that sort of eased. Thankfully, they didn't look at me like, geez, you hack, we beat you to the punchline. It was more like, oh, okay, yeah, we're all here together, and it went well.
That's a lot of good comedy minds in that space. I mean, it's less so with the football jokes, but when I was doing monologue stuff, it was not unusual for me to work my ass off for a couple of weeks on a segment and then do it with them, and 3 or 4 of the funniest beats of the whole fucking thing were lines that they just said off the cuff that I didn't find on my own, beating my head against the wall on purpose for 2 weeks.
Right. But I would imagine you don't begrudge yourself the fact that you didn't find those, because you found the other jokes that they wouldn't have found. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Right. That's the nature of comedy. Right. And sometimes the joke that's easy for you, the other guy would have never stumbled on, and vice versa. And sometimes the best joke seems easy after it's written.
Yes.
only because it's so good that it seems obvious, but isn't. So, I mean, the whole process is what it is, Right?
Plus, you did the heavy lifting. You came up with you saw the story, you came up with the premise, you formed the joke, and then all we have to do is shout out some related words.
Yes. Well,
you got the barbell up, and we
you're very kind.
And put it on the.
Yes, obviously, a lot of what happens in a segment like mine is you bring your homework and then you try to not be married to it and have a conversation with everyone. And
That's
so
yeah.
obviously some of the best parts are that they couldn't do that homework, but sometimes there's a line that's like really beautiful that could have been written, and that gets me a little like, how did I miss that? That's a perfect one, the kind that feel like you should sit down to get to them.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
important. I always, well, first off, and I'm not blowing smoke, you've always been one of my favorite joke writers.
Ah,
And
thanks,
one of
buddy.
the things that I love about your quick snaps and everything is that your football jokes aren't just for the hardcore football fan. They're always for everybody.
That's the goal.
Well,
Yeah, hopefully.
there may be a reference or two that I may not get or that somebody's not going to get, but those are the exception, I would say.
Ah, thanks, man.
Oh boy, I just got so busy blowing you, I forgot what my point was.
I'll blow you back. You're a great comic. Some people who may have not seen you do stand up, I mean, you're a freaky good comic, and you have been for a long time. So for us as comics, it's nice to see one of us that we like and that we appreciate, like, go up a notch to a thing that's like, oh, that's great. We're happy for you, man. It's cool.
Yes, thank you. There was some negative responses to me getting that job.
What? Really? From what?
Mostly from people that I'd never met.
Okay.
So
fuck them.
yeah, so it didn't really have much of an effect on me. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think most of us are excited when we get cool gigs, like
For each other. Yeah, yeah.
right. And I think I think if you're happy with what you're working on, it's easy to be happy with what other people are doing.
Yeah, that's a really sharp insight. I agree
If you're
with that.
not, if I've ever been jealous or that sort of bitter comedian thing where you go, oh, how did he get
Right.
Montreal or whatever? And it's only because I'm not. I realize it's only because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And they were. There's no reason to get. That's the only reason. It's all pretty much all that comes from the inside. You just have to realize it and go, okay, I need to work. I
didn't come here for heavy shit, Josh Arnold.
I remembered my point though. You mentioned not being married to your material on the Bob and that's so important. And I realized that maybe fourth or fifth time I was in there as a guest of look, they want me to do some of this material, but there's a good chance I'm not going to get to a lot of it. I can't sit here and try to jam it in. It's just not going to work. I've got to.
That's such a hard lesson on radio. Yeah.
Right. And my heart goes out to you and to Godwin and Bob Zane and Kavanaugh, these guys who call in and they have stuff. And I think I can tell. I can probably, in that room, I can probably read a setup better than everybody else because I have the stand-up comedian background.
Right, that's right.
They all know comedy really, really well, but they haven't had as much stand-up comedy experience.
Right.
So when I go, this is a clear setup. We got to let him finish. One of the other jackasses is going to jump in. Oh, Costaki, did you hear about? He was just getting to a joke.
I love that. You've definitely had my back several times. You've been very kind. Like, Tom, I believe he came here with some prepared material.
Yeah, sometimes I'll just flat out say it.
Sometimes you literally say it. It's really funny. Yeah, it is a hard lesson because you if you do your homework well, you did a lot of homework. So it's hard to not be married. It's the same thing in stand-up, but now the work is done and it's just a part of the thing that's going to happen. And if going back to this takes you away from this, then fuck that. You need to stay over there. And it took me a long time to really accept that. And actually just this past week, I didn't do a couple of what I think are the best jokes because they didn't fit the moment and we were kind of done with the thing. And I didn't go, hey, let me shoehorn, you know, it's like, okay, we did what we came here to do. We had a good conversation. It was real and in the moment.
Right.
And then there were some jokes that I wrote that fit in there that were good too. And we're
Yeah.
done. That was great.
And it took me a while to accept that that's what I should be doing in there as a guest.
Right.
And then it took me a little longer to enjoy that.
Oh yeah, that's
to
interesting.
go, you know what? This is fun. This is what I should. This is what this is. This should be. This should be its own organic thing. And yeah,
it's interesting how different the skills are because, like, again, to give you a compliment, I did a little bit of guest hosting with those guys, and what I do normally on the show is I work really hard on this tiny little thing. And then I come in and I do it, and we have this kind of moment that we have a little bit of a footprint, and then I scram. And it speaks to my strengths because I'm sort of a sit down and write it kind of guy. And then I have enough of the other chops to kind of play with them and do whatever. But to sit there for 4.5 hours and keep the ball in the air is really taxing and hard to do. And at the end of it, you are exhausted.
you are, isn't it? And that is something. It's really hard to explain to people who haven't done it. Not that they need to, not that they need to know necessarily.
Yeah,
but,
right.
But what sounds like a fun, silly, carefree conversation among friends, after 4 hours, you really are tired.
Like, yeah, if you do it well. Yeah, yes, you're engaged the whole time, and you're not fucking around, and you're not zoning out. Your mind is mush at the end of that because you have to really be laser focused for a long period in a row.
Yes, I don't really like to talk after 10:15 from 10:15 to noon. I would prefer not to speak.
Right. Yeah, I bet.
It's hard to listen. I don't want to listen to anybody for a while. I don't want to. Yeah, it gets difficult. Can you see this weird little bug?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I live in disrepair.
It feels like the fishing trip, like the image I would have of guys on a fishing trip. Wow, I love this insight of if that's about you. I'm going to have to think more about that. I think that's great when you're not happy for someone else's success. That's because you're not on the right path for you. That's great.
I know that that's how it is for me. I can't speak for everybody, but I know that that's if I'm ever feeling that way, it's only because I have I've slipped. I'm not focused on what I should be doing. And so as soon as I refocus and I start putting a little more work in, all those feelings go away, and all I want to do is celebrate what everybody else is doing. Because,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's awesome. And
I feel
much rather feel that way. Nobody wants to.
Of course.
I mean, there are guys in comedy and probably in music and probably in everything and sports that kind of thrive off that bile. It seems like they love, or at least if they're not thriving off of it, it's certainly all they talk about. And it's so they must get something out of feeling that way. But I don't like it. I don't like that feeling. And I just do whatever I can to not feel that way.
Yeah, good for you. I feel like I had a really good run of never having that. Like, almost to the point of it being like other comics were like, that doesn't bother you? I'm like, no, not at all.
No.
And then in the last few years, I've had a few beats of it where I'm like, that's the fucking guy they pulled out of the pile.
Sure. Well, sometimes it is just flat out unfair.
Right, of course. But show business doesn't pretend to be fair. I mean, it's almost the cliche of like, it's not a meritocracy. No one even pretends that it is.
Right.
So no, but and of course, if you try to figure it out on the merits, it could make you a little crazy. But naturally, the obvious choice is exactly what you're saying, which is take any of that energy and put it into being better at what you're doing. Because A, that's going to help you better in the long run, and B, it'll help you immediately get your head straight about you, right?
Yes, yeah. Focus on what you control. You can't control whether or not that guy got, a gig that you wanted. You can control your work, so just do that.
Right. And for me personally, there are very few characters that I kind of dislike in stand-up. For the most
Same.
part, everyone's easy to root for. I mean, they're
I
good
agree.
folks who work hard, and it's a weird craft, and you have all this empathy because you've shared all these very specific moments with this other person just by
Sure.
being a comic, you know. So,
Right.
I generally root for comics in all of the things, always. Comics are easy to root for.
If you're watching a comedy show and the person is killing and you don't find them funny, do you assume that that the audience is crazy or they don't know better or that you're wrong?
That's a good question. I find it like a mystery. I find it like a mystery that needs to be unraveled. There's some comics that have magic that with an audience that defies understanding for me. Like it doesn't. I don't find this guy that likable or the lines that interesting, but there's something happening that's going on here that he's nailing. And so I try to see it as a game to learn from it.
Yeah, and I tend to go, well, I'm wrong, clearly.
Oh yeah, you immediately go, oh, it's me then.
Look at the 200 people that are having a ball.
Right.
I'm wrong. I'm incorrect in this. Or at the very least, my opinion does not matter here because what am I going to do? Stand here and go, you shouldn't have been laughing at that. You
Yeah, this is ridiculous. Yeah.
I'm going to ruin everybody's fun?
No, of course not. But you must have the opposite too, where there's guys that you watch and you go, this guy's a fucking genius. How come no one seems connected at all? What's happening?
Yes, yeah, that's way more baffling to me because that is where I get snooty. I don't get snooty when somebody who is killing and I don't really find them funny. I get snooty when the audience isn't laughing at somebody who's clearly hilarious.
Right.
I go, what do you? I know comedy. I'm laughing. You guys don't know anything.
That's funny. You're only on the one half of it.
What do you idiots know?
That's great. You're a nice guy. This is further proof that you're a nice guy, right? You just find the good way to see it all.
Not always, funny. But I just like when people are happy and having fun. I really like. I mean, that's like my favorite thing about comedy. I think is just
right.
And I really get sore when people get offended because that's never my intent. You know what I mean? Like, and so
yes,
you just go, oh man, I did not mean to make somebody feel bad.
Right.
And in my comedy, I don't tend to on the radio show. I will say ridiculous things about people who don't deserve. For instance, some old celebrity died the other day, and I just yelled "Adios, bitch," because that's the craziest thing to say. Who would really feel that way? And so in my mind,
that's the funny part.
In my mind, everybody listening is going, "Well, that was nuts," and they're laughing. I'm forgetting about the people who are going, what the hell's wrong with him? Why would he?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right.
So I have to be aware that while I think my offensive jokes are clearly jokes, but there's some who just aren't going to hear it that way.
That's great. All right, so are there things that you know now on that side of the desk that you wish you knew when you were coming in as a comic? And what are they? How can you educate us about how to do this better when you come into that room?
Yeah, there are some things. I mean, some of them would be pretty deep. Like there are things that I would tell comedians who are coming in for the first time, or and the one thing would be start with your strongest, shortest joke.
Yeah, that's
Whatever
right.
It is. Make sure it's one line and that it hits 100% of the time.
Right.
Because if you can do that, and if you can do that if you have 2 or 3 jokes like that, put them all up, just whatever you're asked, just have those there.
Right.
And what will happen is Tom will then trust you. He'll go, okay, this guy's funny. He's not going to talk too much. And and therefore you're going to get a wider berth.
Right.
But if you've if your best bit takes 45 seconds to set up, even if that punch is just killer, you're never going to get to it.
That's right. That's good advice. It's funny because that's your first advice, because that's my first advice to comics about Bob and Tom. Because I've been on the show so much, I get buddies who are like going in for the first time, and they're like, "What?"
Yeah.
I tell them, I go, think of it like a black club. You better be funny in that first 10 seconds, or
Yeah.
you don't get to keep going.
Right.
So normally when a writer type white guy is doing stand up, you save your best line for the end.
Right.
You're never going to get to the end if you're working a black club or talking to Tom Griswold for the first time.
Right.
So you have to prove that you deserve to sit there for a while, and that's the best way to do it. Right.
Yeah. And just show them, hey, you can trust me. I'm not here to waste your time. I'm not here to, I want to get good jokes out.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. And what else? Give me a deeper one. What else you got?
Pay attention.
Listen.
Put that phone down and listen. And unless you are, you better be damn sure that what you're going to say during like a news story or is going to be good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've definitely fall on the side of patience on that. And invariably at the end of the morning, I'm like, I should have jumped in with this, and I didn't say that, and I could have, and I definitely hang in there and say nothing if it's close.
There are some other, don't get overly familiar with Chick before he gets to know you.
That's a good tip. Yeah.
Don't walk in, slap him on the back, and tell him that the Redskins suck. You're done.
Right.
You're done.
Good. That's good. That's good advice.
Yeah. And to me, that's I don't see that as a flaw of Chick's. I see that as a 35. That's indicative of a guy who's been doing it for 30 plus years, who that's just not amusing anymore.
Right. And it speaks a little bit to like not having deference, which is a good idea when you're new to anything, you know? Right. Of course.
Yeah. You're a guest. Yeah.
That's right.
Right. And boy, and again, I think one of the main things that we did touch on, which is just don't be too married to what you came in to say. You've got to feel the moment and
right.
And just try to breathe and have fun. Yeah. Yeah. We're all nice. And we just remember, it took me a little bit. I wonder if it took you much time when you first started comedy to realize that it's not, the relationship between you and the audience is not adversarial. You're both, you're rooting for you.
Everyone's rooting for me. That's right.
Right. I wonder, I don't know. I feel like it took me a little bit to go, oh, this isn't me versus them. This is all of us here together. We all want to have fun.
That's interesting. I don't think I had that.
You didn't? Okay.
I mean, maybe. It was definitely a challenge that seemed daunting beyond compare when I was new to it. But I don't know if I saw it as me against them. That's kind of funny. I've always felt like, to me, it always felt like you're training a dog. If the dog senses that you're not comfortable, you're fucked. Somehow.
That's really big.
Somehow, if the dog knows you're not in charge, then you're definitely not in charge. You have to show them with your body language and your voice that you are flat-footed and this is your house for a little while. And if you shake or show weakness or show a lack of confidence, the whole thing can collapse like a house of cards.
Yeah. That
was hard for me to learn because I'm a little more of the hesitant, throw away a line at a party guy. I'm not the go in there, guns blaring type. So to have a little bit of, I got this. This is my house attitude was hard for me to get to.
Yeah, because I'm the same way. I don't even take the mic out of the stand. I like to have, because I'm sure during this whole thing I've been flailing my heart. But I like that. I like to be able to, kind of just throw my arms around, and I just like the casual look of it. I don't.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I used to always take the mic out, and then and then I left it in one night and I went, oh, I really liked that. But anyway, so I have to do things, or, we have to do things to let the audience know, yeah, this is and it can be subtle. All I do is, even if the stool is exactly where I want it, and I'm sure this is an old trick. I didn't invent it. Even if the stool is exactly where I want it, I move it. I'll move it and then even put it back. And then I'll kind of, just to let people know, okay, this is his space.
Ah, it's good.
Yeah, just small little.
No one does it better than Ted Alexandro. Have you seen him start a set live? Man.
No, I haven't.
He is in no hurry. He lets them know that this is his space, and I talked to him about this a few times because I find it fascinating. And he's like, well, you'll get him eventually. And in my head, I'm like, no, sometimes you don't fucking get him. How could you go up there all casual and confident that you're going to get him?
Right.
Yeah,
wow.
For me, it's always been terrifying because I don't know what the ratio is, but 1 out of 20 times, it's just a disaster.
Yeah.
And so you always have a fear, and you're working towards avoiding that for everyone, not just for me. These people got a babysitter and brought, there's a whole rigmarole that's happening. And if I do something and the whole thing collapses, I feel bad at the end of it,
Yep. Yeah.
So I've always had that, and I've tried to get better at letting go of that. There's only so much of it I can control anyway. And you have a better shot of avoiding it if you have a little bit of that Ted in you. So I know intellectually, but that's still a challenge for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to start. I don't want to take my time. I want to show that I'm casual, that I'm relaxed, but no, I want to get going so that it kind of goes back to the Bob and Tom. I want them to know they can trust me right off the bat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So did the show in Toledo, is that a real thing? The Toledo show that was horrific, or did that just get exaggerated by Tom Griswold's one day?
It's a real thing, but what you mean to say are Toledo shows. They was plural. So what happened was I had been featuring in St. Louis and some other clubs. The Comedy Attic was one of the first clubs to feature me, and it went really well, and I was killing in St. Louis, and I was getting more road feature work, which is, for those watching who don't know what a feature or a middle is, it's the guy who goes up after the MC, does 25 minutes or so before the headliner. So and typically clubs will not have their hosts will be local, and then they would bring in the features and headliners. So
right.
This was I was finally at a point where I was going to be getting paid to travel and do stand-up. So I quit my day job because enough of these had been coming around.
Great moment in the boy's life.
Yes, yeah. I quit. Well, what I should say is I quit full time. I was still working. I could kind of work when I wanted. It was a traveling gig with Rolling Sporting Goods. So yeah, but I lost all my benefits. I lost the for sure paycheck, that kind of thing. So Greg Warren, he's going to take me out on the road, and he goes, hey, we're going to hit, we're doing Indianapolis, and we're doing Toledo, and we're doing Lexington, Kentucky. Indianapolis will be a breeze. Toledo can be a little tough, and Lexington sometimes can be tough, but it's great. And okay.
That all sounds right.
And we're going to do Bob and Tom. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And we're going to do Bob and Tom, when Indian, I was like, oh, awesome. So I go on Bob and Tom. It goes really well. And Indianapolis goes well.
That's the only thing that matters. Everything else is whatever.
So I'm like, oh man, quit my day job. I'm a working comedian. It just went well on Bob and Tom. I show up in Toledo. I forget if it was Thursday through Sunday or whatever. I think it was Thursday through Sunday. That Thursday, I just eat shit hard. I mean, just so bad. I bomb so hard. And the host, the MC, was the late Chili Chalice. So just a total veteran and charming as all get out.
Yeah.
He had like 10 or 15 minutes of killer local Toledo material that was just
That's
awesome.
not even fair. You're like a kid. You're a comedy embryo.
So he was kind of a ringer, and
Oh, goodness gracious.
but a wonderful guy. He wasn't out to bury me. He was just doing what he does.
Oh yeah, right.
And so, so I go up. It's awful. So Friday night rolls around. You know, Greg's kind of like hey, you need to move some things around in your set. Greg's he's a tough coach. He's very supportive. He's done so much for me in my career, but he is a tough coach.
That's interesting. I didn't
like
know
he'll flat
this
out
about
tell
him.
you, I thought you had 25 minutes. You really only have 12. Well, thanks, Greg. This is great. So anyway, so he's kind of like, hey, shake it off. Friday night, the first show, I bomb brutally again. It's just awful. What the hell's going on? This stuff worked in St. Louis. It worked in Indiana. I did well on Bob. What is happening? So the second show, he goes, hey, I'm going to cut you. Greg goes, I'm going to cut you from 25 to 20. That should make it. And I'm going to tell the club it's because I want to go longer. I'm working on some stuff. I was like,
He's trying to help you. All right.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to save you some face, and I'm going to. So that second show is even worse than the first two. And I don't even hang around after the show. I just storm to the hotel, which is across the street. And
yeah, it's the best thing about that gig.
Yes, I get a call from Greg, and I just let it go to voicemail. I just went to bed. I didn't want to talk. I didn't anything. So Saturday, he goes, how about you do 15 minutes? And, you'll get up, you'll go, it'll be okay. And maybe move this here and put that there and this.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Saturday, the first show, I bomb harder. I mean, it just keeps getting worse and worse. And by the way, Chili killing, I'm totally bombing, Greg killing. So I know it's me,
That's
essentially.
the weirdest, yeah. Right.
So at one point during my set, the first show Saturday, I got one of the worst heckles ever because it wasn't, to call it a heckle is even, what happened was I was getting no laughs. Literally no laughs. I would have preferred boos because at least then I knew they were hearing me. It was just total silence. And one thing that Greg told me, he goes, man, nobody stays in the pocket like you because apparently it was like, this audience, they all must have thought I was a lunatic because I was acting like everything was fine.
You. That's a funny compliment.
I'm sure they were watching going, any rational human being would have walked out and they were just up there still talking. What are you doing? So I'm near the end or whatever of my set and I tell a joke and it gets absolutely nothing. And I just hear one guy in the sold out showroom. I just hear him go, wow. He couldn't take it anymore. He had to say something.
That's very polite for a heckler.
Yes, it was polite, but it was also it just killed me.
Yeah, I hear
because he was being human. He was like he just couldn't take another person's suffering away.
That room is hard, man.
Well, afterward, and then the best show ended up being the Sunday night show. And granted, I was down to like 12 minutes.
Right. You'd already given up.
Right.
You had nothing to lose.
Yes. And I had taken Greg's advice on a couple jokes, and I had moved some things. So I think, it was probably my best set of the weekend anyway. But it did go okay. But it was... I later found out from a lot of particularly features that they all struggled, and guys that I thought were so hysterical and are now like, big time working comedians around. They all said they struggled there. They all.
Yeah, it's not people. People giggle about Toledo. People, whatever. It's not Toledo. It's something about the way that room is built.
Right.
The ceiling's too high. The situation is a little. Something is not magical in there. I've done that room on and off for 15 years, and all of the other trappings are great. It's actually one of the greatest restaurants to be a part of a comedy club in the whole country.
Unbelievable food, and I wonder if that's also part of the problem. I've heard some guys actually say that when you're the middle, that's when all the food's coming out.
You know what? It's probably that probably
Maybe,
is a factor.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to attribute it all to that by any
The
means.
staff is great. The management is great.
It's gorgeous.
The audiences are good. The hotel is a nice hotel, and it's literally like 50 yards from the stage.
In many ways, it's a dream gig.
It's the perfect gig, except that you can't kill in there for some reason.
Isn't that weird?
So the ceiling is lower and the floor is lower. So when it's not going well, it hurts your feelings in that room. I think that's not you. I think that's all of us. And so you had the marriage of a tough situation and being a comedy embryo, relatively speaking.
Right.
And following a seasoned headliner doing local jokes. I mean, Jesus, that's a terrible combination.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I got my ass kicked. My, essentially my first weekend out on one of my first weekends out on the road. Then Lexington went a lot better, but that's because that's one of the greatest places on earth.
It's a great one. That's a weirdly good club.
Absolutely. And you're right. It has nothing. The people were not like.
The people.
After
people
the show,
fun.
the folks in Toledo were so like they weren't mean to me.
Right.
They didn't necessarily want to look at me, but they were. It was more of a.
And sometimes, like, people, like, I come off from that stage and go, I wish I'd done this. And people are like, that was great.
Yeah.
They're not super audible to us because of the setup, but they're enjoying the show, and they're good folks. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I look forward to going back. And that's kind of a joke now. It's like, you are going to, in fact, I was supposed to do it this past summer.
You'd have like a hero's welcome. It would be awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, so now all we do is say Toledo, and it gets us laughing because
I love it. My first multi-night gig ever was at the Birmingham Stardome. You ever do that one?
I never. Now it's still around, right?
I think so. I mean,
okay,
I never
this
year, but up until this year it was.
Yeah.
450 seats, gigantic, ridiculously huge, very theatrical place with the ridiculous. They have smoke and play music to introduce the show. And I was there with, oh goodness, James Stevens III. You ever run into him?
No. I've heard of him.
Black guy, keyboard, your mama jokes, big butt jokes. Like, he did urban radio. So by the end of the week, it was like 400 plus Southern black people who came to see James Stevens III. And I was doing my first multi-night MC gig ever with, hey, did you ever notice they fucking hated my guts? They hated me so much. And I had the same experience of every night I did a little less time.
Yeah.
What's the worst middle act for that show? This is a fun game I play with comics when I tell this story. James Stevens III, nervous white kid. What's the middle act in there that's the worst possible booking? 400 Southern black people ready to see James Stevens III. What do you got?
Judy Tenuta, but she
was in the middle at the time. That's a fun image. I like that.
Yeah.
That would be bad. That would be very bad.
Boy, oh boy, maybe like I mean, these are all guys I think are really funny, but in that situation, maybe somebody like a Mike Kaplan or a
that would be bad. Yes, that would be bad.
Or
Eddie Todd Barry style thing.
Right.
Yes. Here you go. T.C. Hatter and Marcy Ann. Did you?
Okay, I don't know who they are.
It's a white clown who doesn't talk, and his wife is behind him playing clarinet.
So those are their names. I have heard of this act, and the stories. I love the stories about it so much.
They're actually good.
I
actually worked with them in Lexington. They headlined and killed the whole week. They're good. They're a little bit of a, like, they do fairs because they're kid friendly.
Yeah.
So there's a little geared that way. But the show is funny. I mean, they do this weird interactive stuff, but he doesn't speak, and he's got full face makeup. They hated him so much. It was every night I would come in and I was like, all right, TC, I got my lucky shirt on. This when we turn it around. we would just go out and die miserable deaths of less minutes than they let us do the night before.
Oh
And then
man.
James would kill for like 85 minutes in a row. You know, it was
I mean, you're right.
hilarious.
That is a poorly booked show.
Terrible. They were coming through to audition to headline. I don't think it worked out.
Oh no.
Didn't work out for me either. I didn't go back there for years. But, you know, anyone who knows anything about comedy is like, all right, this is, you know, everyone's a victim here. This is nobody, you know, like,
Exactly.
this didn't work out. But
Yeah, this was not this is none of our fault.
But it's demoralizing when you're new and you decide to commit to it. I mean, for that to happen, one of the first weeks of like, okay, I said goodbye to the job. I did, you know, I had a similar experience of like, okay, I'm not going to do this other thing I was going to do.
Yep.
And then you go cry into a pillow a little bit, second guess your whole
Yeah.
life.
And then you wake up and you go, all right. And luckily I had a guy like Greg Warren go, let's go to Starbucks, bring your notebook. We're going to go. And, you know, you just muscle through. You work. You get to work.
I love it. That's so great. I got to ask you this. My boy Ron Milford sent me a note. He goes, where did he get good at scatting? He said that's one of the funniest things he's ever seen. Like, where does that come from?
It's nice that he thinks, and that he's a good dude. It's nice that he thinks that I am good at scatting. It's just me being, honestly, it was something I would do probably since I've been little kid. I would just nonsense noises to try to either annoy my brothers, or when I'm alone, I do a lot of singing. This is good. It's one of my insane. If I'm in the house alone and I'm doing the dishes, inevitably I will start. Not all the time, but a lot of times I will start singing about what I'm doing to try to just sort of make myself laugh, or I don't know what I'm doing. And the bad part is sometimes it'll happen like in the middle of the grocery store where there are people and I forget that I'm doing this, so they have to. So I'll just be, you know, I'm also, so I would just kind of do these noises. I've been told that it sounds a little like Jack Black when he would do stuff with Tenacious D and sort of I realized going back and listening to that I probably did pick up some of it from that but I think I was also kind of doing it before. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit of column A, column B, where I went, oh, somebody else is doing it. I can really do it. But it never occurred to me until somebody wrote in saying, hey, you sound like Jack Black. So.
That's interesting. I love that. So
yeah.
basically you were kind of doing it on your own and you got good at it.
Time. And in school, I would just walk up to people and just to try to just be stupid. And people laughed in, you know, junior high and high. And so, yeah.
Yeah. You keep doing it.
And then I guess, yeah. And it makes Tom laugh and it makes Godwin laugh a lot. So I like making
That's great. Well, it's been an hour, and I know that if I keep you after 10, then I'll get a stern email from Tom Griswold tomorrow.
Well, if you have any other questions real quick, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise,
I'd love talking to you, man. It's great. I will ask you this. What are your we'll close on this question. What are your favorite guests or kinds of guests, or what do you, when you see this kind of a guest on the docket, you're like, oh God, you know, you have any of those kind of answers, like from your side of the desk now?
Oh God, no. The favorites are just a lot of the Bob and Tom favorites. You, Kavanaugh, you know what I do enjoy, and I hope if he were to watch this wouldn't hurt his feelings. But
oh, this is interesting.
when Zany comes in, I am overjoyed, and there are a couple reasons why. I love what he does. I'm a sucker for his act. I'm just
the old school, right?
Yes, yeah. I love it.
The one-liners, the ball busting, the attitude.
Exactly.
He is like a time machine. It's beautiful.
Right.
Yeah,
and I'm
I
such
agree.
a sucker for that. Tom and Chick have known him for so long, and so therefore they've worked with him so many times on stage and on the air and everything, that they are not as amused as he was used to be. So if Zany ever comes in, I am elated because I know he's going to make me laugh.
Right.
And when he's making what makes me laugh is Bob makes me laugh. And then what makes me laugh harder is when I look at Tom and Chick who just can't believe that I'm laughing. And so,
I love this
to see them annoyed. And then what will typically happen is Tom will get annoyed and try to move on, and Bob will interrupt him with some joke that makes me laugh. And then I'm laughing I'm laughing at the joke. I'm laughing that Tom's annoyed. I'm laughing that Tom's being interrupted, which pisses him off. And the whole thing's a train wreck, and I am the happiest.
What a great answer. That's great. That's extra funny to me because I love Zany for all the same reasons. Yes. And I've worked with him so many times. I like him as a person too. And
yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, his stage persona and the Zany that you get is, there's something kind of beautiful about it. I like it. I haven't seen him in a long time. I miss that guy.
Yeah, me too. And again, I'm not. This is not lip service. I really do love when you call in Tuesday mornings. When you call in.
Oh,
it's great because I get to sit back, know that I'm going to hear some really strong jokes, and get to have fun with you, by either throwing in a tag or teaching you about one that didn't work or whatever. It's just such a ball.
You're great, man. You've had so many good lines when I've called. It's been fun. And sometimes you kind of throw them away, and I hear them. I get them. I'm enjoying them. And sometimes they're like showstoppers. Like, oh, that's the best joke of the whole thing. It's great, man. Really, it's not blowing smoke at you either. I love that you're a great comic who graduated into another thing that you love, that you deserve, and it's cool to see you succeed. And not this year because I'm not going anywhere, but in the prior 3 or 4 years when I'm out there on the road, I hear from people all the time like, Josh is great on the show, and we're so glad Josh is in there, and I love it, Josh. And it's because I knew you a little bit before, it was easier to root for you, So I'm glad it's all working out, and I think you're a great addition to the show. You're the show. You're part of the show, man. It's great.
Thank you. I mean, it really does mean a lot because, again, I listened to Bob and Tom before. I was a fan first, and I was a fan of yours first. And now being one of your friends is one of the great, honors of being a comedian. I get to be friends with people that made me laugh before I even knew them.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Wonderful. I feel the same way. That's cool to hear you say it that way. That's one of the great gifts that we have as comics. We don't have health insurance, but we do get to be buddies with the funniest people in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that's hard to measure the value of that. It's really a beautiful thing.
It is. Yeah.
All right, man.
Great. If you ever want to do this again, just let me know.
Absolutely. Tell Tom and Chick to come talk to me. We'll figure it out.
I will, for sure.
I'm kidding. They're both going to say yes to me. It's just a matter of timing. I know how it works. I love it, man. It's great to really talk to you. Thank you for doing this. Listen to this guy on Bob and Tom, wherever you find your Bob and Tom. There's a lot of ways to do it now. You want to tell them some of the non-traditional ways? How do people? Yeah,
the Bob and Tom app is really good. You can hear the show from any radio station that your favorite radio station. You can also hear a ton of old stuff with Bob on it. So if you hate me, it's fun. And I actually do have a They made me start a podcast.
Wait a minute, I didn't know this. You doing a podcast?
It's brand new. I recorded the first one yesterday. It's just me
talking.
It's just me talking for
wow. A bit. What's the name of it?
That Josh Arnold podcast. So I think it'll be available in a couple days. And
that's great.
It'll be
that Josh Arnold podcast. Well, we'll all look for that. Awesome. Awesome. And you can catch me on this show about 8:20 on Tuesday mornings. Just a reminder, tomorrow is the thing that we're doing with Quick Snaps, the Inside the Huddle guys. If you want to get involved with that, go on Patreon and check that out and come join us. And it'll be a podcast as soon as next week, probably. So you can check it out that way too. We'll see you back here at this same time and place next Wednesday night. Thanks, guys, for watching. Thank you, Josh.
You're welcome, man. Thank you.
Talk to you on Tuesday.
All right.
Go blow it. Laugh it up.